Particularly the last hours before the transition are decisive for the place, the height which you will reach in the world beyond. One should be very solicitous about the last hours of the sojourn on earth. Often the final striving can predetermine the succeeding life, although the strata in which the spirit will dwell. Remember that we create ourselves, our Deva-chan, heaven, as our Avicii, hell, while yet on earth, and mostly during the latter days and even moments of our intellectual sentient lives. That feeling which is the strongest in us at that supreme hour, when, as in a dream, the events of a long life, to their minutest details, are marshaled in the greatest order in a few seconds in our vision. That vision takes place when a person is already proclaimed dead. The brain is the last organ that dies. That feeling will become the fashioner of our bliss or woe, the life principle of our future existence. The last striving, just before the transition, determines your further path. Therefore, preserve clarity and consciousness as long as possible, and aim as high as you can. Upon the casting away of matter, the final thought is like an arrow. This moment determines the direction of the flight. The higher up, the more pleasant the stay, and on the border of the mental plane the spirit can rest. But one must consciously avoid the lower strata. It is necessary that the outbreak of the consciousness propel the kernel of the spirit upward as far as possible. Therefore, the moment of transition is so important, for in it one may dispatch oneself to the higher strata. It is very difficult to rise when one got caught in the lower strata. We had already said, to attain immortality means to preserve an continuous, uninterrupted consciousness, the consciousness of your eternal individuality during all the various changes of existence. When you create a new consciousness at every stay on earth, once Mr. Smith, another time Mrs. Miller, each of which ends upon your leaving this world, you are but mortal. You have achieved immortality only if you manage to remain one and the same, once and forever. That means preserve one single individuality. In all material and non-material worlds, regardless of which part of your eternal journey you are about to travel, and also during the transition from one level to the other. A yogi can pass into the subtle state while in full consciousness. Accordingly, you must learn to cross over to the spiritual world without an interruption of your consciousness. It is the body that dies. not the consciousness. Especially noteworthy is the transition wherein consciousness is preserved. Then it can be clearly seen how the earthly tatters fall off and the imperishable accumulation emerges, revealing itself to be the true treasure. This is a difficult and challenging spiritual exercise. However, it is at the top of the training program of the man of the future. If you want to be an immortal spiritual being, you must be able to consciously visit your homeland and to live there consciously. Refinement of striving will provide calmness during the transition from one state of existence to another. Thus is achieved the quality of an achat, who never interrupts the flow of consciousness and constantly strives toward the future. Prepare yourself for this conscious dying already in the incarnated state. You can try to experience without an interruption of your consciousness and to live consciously through the transition to sleep, the brother of death, in the evening, and the awakening from sleep in the morning. Falling asleep should be a conscious transition into the higher world. In the evening, do not think of falling asleep. Rather think of entering in spirit the ashram of your teacher in the upper world, as in meditation. Report for duty for the night as well. Offer your cooperation to cope with the tasks that need to be done in the subtle world. In order not to lose consciousness, the most important thing is to remember and strengthen throughout one's life the decision to maintain consciousness during the transition. In the morning, when you wake up, when the world of the soul is still close and memory has not yet faded away, first capture a tale of your last dream and try to remember your work during the night hours. One should start by continually feeling himself to be living in two worlds. This is not difficult at all, because we cross each night into the subtle world, where, if our subtle body has been sufficiently developed, we can apply our subtle energies with good benefit. When we go to sleep, not thinking of rest, but striving to the hierarchy of light with a thought of useful labor. We thus direct our energies to active help where it is most needed. Consciously sending oneself into the subtle world can be increased to such an extent that we begin to remember clearly our many-sided work at night and our visits for the purpose of rendering help to people often quite unknown to us. The moment of the transition itself is of a unique nature. It is experienced according to the level of the consciousness. The precise moment of transition into the subtle world is accompanied by a sensation of dizziness, as during fainting or at the beginning of a fit of epilepsy. The sensations that follow depend entirely upon the preparedness of the consciousness. If the consciousness has been obscured or dimmed, the senses cannot be transformed in the new condition. In this case, a kind of oblivion or drowsy roaming about occurs. This state is not a pleasant one. Thus, if Agni has been awakened during life through knowledge or heroic feeling, it will immediately accomplish the great transmutation. Like a veritable torch, it will indicate the way. Like radiant helium, it will carry one up into the predestined sphere. This instant, depending upon the spiritual state of our being, may be a moment of special, highest consciousness. Death, which unseals the eyes, does so by relinquishing the blinders which have previously intercepted the light, so that the inner senses may be opened. It can give us a glimpse of bright realization. We procure ourselves a view over our whole life and are finally able to assess its events from the point of view of eternity, according to their true meaning. Wondrously and instantaneously, the consciousness of a thinking person is transformed while crossing into the supermundane world. Some events of the life just past gain significance, while others lose their importance. The earthly achievements believed to be most important prove to be meaningless, whereas every self-sacrificing deed in service to humanity grows in radiant glory. Those deeds bring joy, while the earthly achievements are transitory and turn into dust. Man reaches the highest summits through those soaring thoughts, to which he may not even have paid attention. Characteristically, he ignores his valuable achievements and drowns himself in the hubbub of the bazaar. This is the essence of the re-evaluation of one's earthly existences. On the threshold to the spiritual world, our inner senses are sharper than they used to be in the bonds of matter. Already half detached from the body, we are now in a position to perceive more subtle realities than before. Each man bears a secret within himself. Rarely does the curtain of the past roll back. Only by transcending the boundary of earth is man enlightened in the realization of a portion of his secret. The memory is suddenly illumined, and the past stands out in all justice. It can be understood why this most subtle treasure cannot be revealed amid crude conditions. Finally, you have to provide for the fate of your physical shell after your departure. From the spiritual point of view, a cremation is recommended. That means the burning of the mortal remains. Let us not pollute Mother Earth with our leftovers. In addition, the soul can detach from matter more easily and quickly if its physical cover is immediately done away with. What effect has cremation upon the entity just leaving the physical body? It permits the essence of the astral to escape more easily. It makes it easier to get away. It is not tied to the physical body as long as it must be if gradual disintegration of the atoms is permitted. However, one should not proceed with the cremation too fast. That is, it should take place at the earliest after 3 days. The speed at which the subtle body disengages from the flesh is individually different. When the will is lazy, the astral body emerges lazily. Some can do everything on time, whereas others are late in everything. Yet this is no reason for scorching someone's heels. In India, the discarded shell is often burnt too soon, and that may cause considerable injury to the subtle body. Helena Röhrig describes an ancient worthy ritual of dealing with the corpse. In Atlantis there existed the following custom. The deceased was not touched, but was thickly sprinkled with oil of eucalyptus, and was immediately covered with a sacred shroud, and showered with flowers. For 3 days and 3 nights, fire was kept burning around the body in a closed circle. And immediately following the departure of the astral body, the physical body was burned. This is a very wisely conceived ritual. This ritual and the sacred shroud were called purificatory of peace. The first 40 days after death are especially important for the ascent in the subtle world. This knowledge has been preserved by the Orthodox Church. Prayers for the departing soul are particularly welcome and useful during this time. One may send strength and the best wishes for the highest possible ascent. But one must not obstruct the path of the departed by wailing and moaning and trying to tie him down on our side. For a consciously developed spirit, the period of sojourn on the astral plane could be limited to the interval of 40 days, but various earthly conditions have prolonged this time to an interminable period. The misery and grief of those who are carried away from earth bind them thereto.